One. Paul, how are we, sir?
We are well. How are we?
We are very good. So thank you so much for coming. This is what, your fourth, fifth, sixth? Have you got the double hat trick ball like in soccer AM?
I'm not double hat trick. I don't
No, I
think.
think you're four or five, I'd say at this.
Yeah.
I think you're up there. I think yourself and Brian are fighting it out for Champions League at the minute. But Paul, honestly, I'm for anyone who's on YouTube, I'm holding up Paul's brand new book, Full, The Emptiness of Overeating. Paul was very kind to send me a copy of it, and it is superb. Genuinely, it's something that you should be so proud of. It's the most complicated thing, which is the psychology of eating in the most simplest form, is the way I can describe the book.
Thank you so much. Um, Years back, I read a book from Morgan Housel, and he used an example of how a janitor retired with 8 million in his account and shocked everybody he knew. And a famous Wall Street banker went completely broke and took his own life. And I remember it was around 2020 reading that book, and he made the point, in what other industry could somebody with loads of knowledge do so much worse than somebody with no knowledge based on how they behave? And he said finance is probably the only industry. And I remember having this visceral no, I think nutrition's the same. I know people personally, and I've been someone where you consume nutrition or fitness content all day long, but you find it so hard to apply. And I know friends of mine who haven't a clue, who say the most batshit ludicrous things about fitness that are so wrong it makes my head hurt, but they do well because they behave a certain way. And the whole premise of the book is that eating is very little to do with what you know and much more to do with how you behave. That nutrition itself is a hard science, but the eating process is a soft skill. And I think science helps you understand food and calories, but skills help you understand yourself. And I mentioned it at the start that scientists can quantify calories and protein, but they cannot quantify the anxiety that floods your mind the moment a certain food hits your tongue. And that's the idea of the book is a very simple yet psychologically loaded look at the skills that make change possible. And that was my motivation for writing the book. And I took a lot of inspiration from people like Housel and other authors that I've read who have just left an impression. And I wanted to have that impression that he had on me in finance on somebody else with food and eating.
But you've definitely left an impression. I know that even the feedback, even if you look at the reviews up on Amazon and stuff like that, you can see the feedback that's kind of coming through on people. And I think one of the big things that I'm going to talk about a few little nuggets and stuff that you kind of talk about. And one of the one of the big things that a lot of people are fighting against, particularly in the industry, and you mentioned this in the book, of like the industry is so, especially the online coaching industry, it's been in existence for a long time, but in the last like 5 years, it's just imploded. Why do you think the industry is in actually no better off place than maybe it was 5 years ago, even with that implosion of trying to go viral, food swap hacks, calorie deficit being shouted at us like it's an alarm clock?
Well, first, I believe people are taught to think about eating like calories and numbers and macros and much less about psychology, which is beliefs and emotions. I also think it's very easy to go on and watch a piece of content or a self-help video and look for that piece of information that's just going to transform you. But there's a reason, in my opinion, it doesn't work. The standard motivation, in quotation marks, of the fitness industry is shame. It is, you are currently hideous and awful, but you'll be worthy when you hit your goal. And if you look at a lot of fitness messaging, it is essentially fitness professionals putting them above people, talking down at them. And even when it's not intended, it's still very much the message of patronizing or condescendingly simple at times, or at least that's how some of it is framed. So that's the first part, is shame is the motivator. And then what happens, in my opinion, is that that shame matches the problem statement in the person's mind. So a person might think they know their problem. They think, I'm fat and I need to be unfat. So they go online and they hear a preachy world of diets and deficits, and it rhymes with the tyrant in their head. So they're always trying to solve the problem with eating less food, which ironically, in my opinion, has the curious effect of putting food at a much higher emotional value. And the real problem is your relationship with yourself. You fundamentally have a relationship with yourself that isn't working. And you're not going to change through anything say I say or any guru says. In fact, one of the things I believe about a great book is that great writers don't teach you, they just remind you what you already think. And that shame piece, that two-part piece of the message is embarrassing you or shaming you about something you're already ashamed of, and then you have already internalized that shame or you pick up that shame. And that's why I think that in essence, the diet industry is no better off because you hear calorie deficit and then you're viewing eating through that very narrow lens of I need to eat less, I can't eat less, what the hell is wrong with me? Rather than look at your patterns. And I think until you're ready to stop and understand your patterns in real time, they're going to continue to run the show. One other thing that I believe that I've been really working on with people, and I'm starting to think this is more of a law than a theory now, and that is the idea that the emotional experience that we are trying to avoid is the one that we are accidentally creating through the way that we try and avoid it. So let's say you're very embarrassed about your body. Instead of understanding the role that that embarrassment is playing in maybe your food and your eating and your social life, you might go on a really strict diet. And then that diet is too strict, and then you find yourself overeating. And that makes you more and more embarrassed about your body. You've created the very outcome you were trying to avoid through the means you've tried to avoid it. So this is a very layered process, but I think once you see through it, it actually becomes quite easy. Like there's a paradox in my opinion. There's no such thing as a quick fix, but also transformation can be quite rapid. For instance, my dad quit smoking when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I just remember, I was just old enough to remember asking why he stopped. And he said, I don't want to smoke around my son. I want to be able to play in the garden. I don't want to smell like cigarettes. And my dad had smoked 10, 20 a day for how many years? But he stopped one day, and I asked him recently enough. I said, Dad, did you just stop cold turkey? He goes, cold turkey. And it was kind of a bit of a powerful metaphor, Shane. Transformation isn't when you change what you do, it's when you change what you want to do. So my dad obviously looked at his 8-year-old son and said, I don't want to smoke. My dad was transformed the second he made that choice. His lungs mightn't have gone all healthy until he whatever, 8, 9, 10 months down the line. But the day my dad knew he was never having a cigarette again, he was transformed. So even though there's no quick fix to get his healthy lungs back, transformation was instant when he looked at me and thought, I don't want to smoke a cigarette anymore. Not even I shouldn't want to smoke it. I don't want to do it. And I think until people stop and introspect and ask, well, how could I enjoy that? I'm about to change my diet. How can I enjoy this more? How can I bring joy to the process rather than going on the internet and having somebody who might be wrestling with their own unresolved issues, shaming you for your best efforts. So stop me, Shane. I'm going to keep rambling all day if I.
I don't know, and then but it's an easy segue into one of the topics you talk about in I think it's chapter two, which is why the harshness that people can talk to themselves or when they see themselves, they start picking themselves in the mirror of why the harshness is and that negative change thing is never going to resolve or help to alter the behavior around kind of the overeating side of things. What can you explain why negativity or harshness is never going to have a positive reaction to the way you're working through or dealing with overeating?
I think if you're dieting to try and fix yourself, to try and like who you are, the real problem is that fat loss is always in the future. It can never really happen now. So any transformation that's in any way meaningful is always happening in the background. It doesn't really feel like it's happening while it's happening. So I think it can become another perfection trap. I'll live when I will
Yeah.
do well when and if anything, that can drive the emotional spiral that brings people back to food. Because if you're only doing a specific behavior for the outcome of fat loss and nothing else, then you're most likely one slip up, one weighing scale fluctuation away from catastrophe. So the idea, in my opinion, is, you know, if I was writing the book again, I'd probably expand on this part further, but can you make certain emotions safe to exist? So I've used this example, and it's what changed my life in terms of writing a book. I had a pattern, and it's the reason I said I wanted to write a book for years, but never did. I would get a surge of motivation. I would write like crazy. I would get 80% of the way. Then I would hit a brick wall. Then I would doubt myself. And then I would think, oh, I'll come back to this when the doubt isn't there. But if that cycle kept happening for a couple of years, and it wasn't until I made doubt safe to exist that I thought, oh, this is not a problem to solve. This is a reminder that I'm alive. So the only people who are not doubtful are dead. And when I made doubt safe, I shrunk the role and I allowed it to kind of assist me on the journey. And I kind of just accepted I was probably never not going to feel doubtful. Even now the book's been out a week, it's selling well. People are giving me amazing feedback. The reviews on Amazon are so, so kind. And I'm still doubtful. Will it achieve? I'm noticing that my identity has been quietly shifting underneath. Instead of now being someone who wants to write a book, I'm now somebody who wants to be a bestseller. Okay, got bestseller. Now I want to be bestseller in the UK, bestseller in the States. I can feel my brain literally shifting. So my kind of perspective is if you're looking for the body image insecurity to kind of go away through the means of fat loss, again, I think you end up creating it for yourself. The real magic is realizing you probably aren't going to diet yourself out of your body image woes. You-
Do you feel a lot of people are aware of their woes, or do they feel, or do you feel there's a gender gap in it?
I don't know if there's a gender gap. As in, I have no idea. I could theorize, but I don't think it would actually be meaningful. But yeah, I think a lot of us think we have the wrong problem. I think we think we have a fat mass problem, but I think fundamentally it's that we have a relationship with ourselves that's not working. And when that happens, it's so easy to go into black and white thinking. And when we go into black and white thinking, we lose our tolerance for joy because again, we're one slip away. So the gender gap's an interesting question. Is it something you've come
Well,
across?
I know from my own struggle with body dysmorphia and stuff like that, a lot of mine was deep rooted into the bullying from being a kid and feeling the need of trying to conform into what inverted commas normal body looked like, and then just not eat food, not eat my lunch as a
Yeah.
way to fit in, and then you'd be wondering why you're head full deep into crisps or whatever it was in the evening, and then you'd struggle with your weight in your teens and you'd be wearing oversized t-shirts and be lost in the t-shirt like it's a maze, and then you won't take your top off ever. And I felt that what brought that to life for me was the fitness photo shoot. It exacerbated an awful lot of the insecurity that I have about how I looked. And it's weird that dieting was the bit that exacerbated that rather than actually going to therapy.
Would you consider that that was your attempt at self-improvement and it
It was
was trying to
myself
stop?
at like self-improvement, but also fitting in, thinking that if I look a certain way, I'm going to get more clients.
Exactly. So if it was an attempt at self-improvement, but it was trying to solve the wrong problem. I've even mentioned in the book that a lot of what looks like self-improvement, like, oh, look at me, aren't I fit and strong and motivated? That's really an attempt to gain respect and admiration.
Yeah.
And one of the best ways to get respect and admiration is to be thoughtful and wise and make people feel seen and heard. And that's one of the most validating ways to get respect and admiration. What I've even come to understand is what many of us call self-improvement is actually an assault on the version of yourself that's doing their best. And I would theorize that self-understanding is what people really want. You know, who am I? What do I stand for? What would make my life better? I started chapter 3 with a question that I've asked lots of people because it seems to really get the juices flowing in people's brain. But if you couldn't lose weight, if it was off the table, how would you eat? What would you do? What would you do differently if weight loss was off the table? And so the reason I ask that is not because I want people to stop their goal. I actually think people can pursue their goal with a sturdy enough foundation. But it's so many people have attached their self-worth to the idea of finally being okay when they're the right weight, that the idea of letting go of weight loss feels terrifying, even temporarily. And it's, I've seen it to be the opposite, that when you learn to let go, when you stop trying and stop trying to solve the problem, it's like this paradox where the solution to you becomes a little bit more clear.
Yeah, it's kind of when you stop trying so hard, it becomes easier and the noise kind of eases off, is what I would say, the way clients have kind of felt it. Of a lot of people think it's like a discipline willpower is what's rammed down your throat down social media.
Oh yeah.
You see Six Pack Pete or Big Betty Booty up on social media saying if you train and eat like this in a right in a day and be disciplined, you'll get the results. Yeah, you'll get to a point fleetingly, probably. But I've never met a client with a lack of willpower, a lack of discipline, or a lack of motivation. They're the three things that are not missing. There's three or four things that are probably against that, and it's not an ability issue in any shape or form. There's obesity. There's there's probably lack of nourishment because the industry has told you restrict, restrict, restrict. There's probably a poor body image piece. And there's probably a self-worth piece that probably you're aware of, but it scares the living fucking shite out of you to actually tackle it. They're probably the three things that are going to stand to you an awful lot more than just going into another calorie deficit.
Yeah, I think the real question is how can you have more fun and more joy? I don't think it's anything to willpower discipline. I really don't.
No,
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
it's
it is either. I think they're just fancy gimmicky terms that are just easy to latch onto because the deeper stuff isn't the sexy stuff that's going to sell a program.
and even on a more simple level. It's very easy to signal discipline and willpower when you're doing something that's already in and around your comfort zone. You know, I never talk about willpower when I do things like body weight training because it's not willpower. I enjoy it. And I think it's very easy to signal something as willpower when it's already in your comfort zone, but people aren't online signaling about all the places that they're avoidant in. And I know a lot of fitness professionals who are happy to go online and talk about doing hard things who in other areas of their life they're the most avoidant people on the planet. And you
Yeah.
don't see that on the internet. And it has nothing to do with discipline and willpower. I remember when someone said to me before, man, you learn Spanish. How are you so disciplined? And I was trying to say very gently without in any way sounding preachy, discipline. No, I just want to. I want to speak Spanish. I don't know how to explain that I just want to do it. And I'm okay with the process it takes. I'm also trying to learn Portuguese and I'm not having as smooth of a time with that. And I'm trying to really think, it's not a discipline issue. Why am I not taking to this? And I know why. I think I'm going to live in Spain for the rest of my life. I don't think I'm going to live in Portugal. I think I'm going to visit it. So I think the motivation for that language has been much lower. I think the motivation of avoidance has been higher on that basis. So if I was to get, say, a Portuguese coach and they were to poke at that, it wouldn't be like, you're so undisciplined. It's more like you your motivation for Spanish was so values aligned. It's so intrinsic and internal. But on this, say on a different thing, is it reward and punishment? Is it something external? Is it something out of you? And that's another framework that I think people would be much happier if they really understood is there's no such thing as the absence of motivation. There's pain avoidance. Every behavior is a motivation. There's pain avoidance or there's like avoiding disappointment or the belief that you can't do something. And I would much rather people see it as like on a spectrum of you got reward and punishment. We all know that. The scale makes me a good person if it goes down and a bad person if it goes up. Then you go a little bit more internal, but it's still external, which is, guilt or conditional self-esteem, which is more like, oh, when I hit my goal in 6 weeks, I'll be worthy, but until then, I'm useless. And then you shift in more towards internal motivation, which is this is hard, but it's worth it. I can hate my legs and still go to the gym. And then you go right into the most intrinsic form of motivation, which is the behavior is its own reward. So I use this Spanish example again, the behavior was its own reward. I just think it's such a cool thing to learn a second language. And I used to shy away from saying it in case they seem boastful, but I'm just going to own it. I think it's so cool to have a second language. I'm
Oh, it
actually
is. I
quite proud.
remember our common person, Mick McDermott. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've met him. I remember I went down to Cork with him maybe 3 summers ago, maybe. And we were down at one, I think it was the Clonakilty Music Festival. And there seems to be an awful lot of like Spanish people living around there because there's a factory or there's a something around there. And we were out with just at the festival and we bumped into a group of lads, started chatting with them or whatever. And then a group of Spanish women came over and Mick just started speaking fluent Spanish. And to see the lads' faces of him being able to talk to these Spanish people in their fluent tongue and not make a fool of himself. It was actually I was in awe of that of Mick for that moment of like seeing the lads' reactions for that moment of being able to have that skill set, but also being able to see how far his language because he was very like you, he was doing the online stuff, but you can kind of see it wasn't the that one moment, it was the build up to that moment because he was clear he wanted to live in Spain, but
Yeah.
he just needed to find the vessel to get him there of being right. If I get there, well, this is going to probably make me learn Spanish more because
And
he's in that environment. And the environment does, like, if you look at all the PTs, it's very similar to that. Their environment is the gym.
yeah.
That's what they feel comfortable in. So they will fit in saying, right, if I look this way, I'd probably be an advertisement. So it's the exact same thing of Mick being in Spain. His vessel was, if I'm in Spain, I need to learn Spanish. Well, if I'm in the gym, I probably should look a certain way. It's the exact same vessel, just two different entities.
Absolutely. Environment is key and your own motivation is key. And it's kind of the point, and it's baked into what you're saying about Mick. I think values work is so crucial. I encourage every single client to do values work. It probably sounds like a really boring topic. I've tried to make it very interesting in the book in terms of using very accessible stories. I've tried to take stories that could be perceived as cliche and put them in a fresh perspective so that the actual reading experience is quite engaging. But without a sense of who you're going to be, without knowing who you want to be on your journey, I think weight loss without values is a really good definition of crash dieting. That's an argument that I make in the book that weight loss is fine. It only becomes harmful when we pursue it in unhealthy ways for wrong reasons. But as a specific goal, it is the mere reduction of a substrate. People attach the meaning onto that after. And I get it. It's hard. But I don't think we do client service by then projecting our own perspectives onto things too. So I think if you got your values and you know who you want to be, like there's a statistic that over 95% of businesses go under. I read that in Housel's book, surprise, surprise. I love Housel so much. And is the lesson there, don't run a business? If you go anywhere in the world, you'll see millions and millions of thriving businesses.
But it's kind of like saying the other side of it is 100% people die, so there's any point in living.
But there you go. You see, you can skew any statistic to any
Yeah.
given perspective. So I'd much rather if somebody wants to lose weight with me, we're not starting with food. I don't see it through the lens of what we eat. I see it through the psychology of why we eat. And it's because I don't know how you feel. I don't know how other coaches feel. And I don't want to, I think it's the height of immaturity to think that your approach is correct and everybody else should do
Mhm.
your way and wrong. From my perspective, I'm just seeing a gap that is coming up time and time again of people saying, I know what to do and I just need to do it. And they know what to do in their head, but emotionally, they haven't felt whatever they need to feel in order to want to apply the transformation principles. And I say that with all the love in the world.
Yeah, I would find the should word implies shame
Yeah, I agree with that.
because I should be doing this. I
Should
should
be
be
further ahead. I
Yeah,
should be.
I should be 50 pounds down. It's like, no, you're at where you're at, not through any failing or anything like that. It's with the current skill set.
Yeah.
It's like you can't start a car without driver lessons or until you get to 16. It's not a moral failing. But I think this I should be further along is there's a level of comparison to everyone else, but there's also a level of probably a little bit of arrogance behind it as well of, well, this should be easy. But why should it be easy? Because the promotions you get at work haven't been easy, but we've known that there's been a step-by-step approach. If I work this long, say if you work for the government, you know that there are pay scales going along the way that you'll be able to get the promotions, etc. But with this, it's just not as, to quote you, it's not, fat loss isn't spectacular.
Yeah,
And the controllable isn't as clear as day, that the scales will go up and down. It's the emotive bit that is hard, which is unspectacular. But this, I should be it, and I've said this to clients that I should, or I should be going for that weight training session, or I should be going for that walk. I'd be like, no, no, no. What would you like to do?
yeah,
And what's
exactly.
getting in the way of you liking to do that? And the answer always is, oh, my kid shit itself, or my dog needed a new leg, or some other thing, some other life thing got in the way. And that's okay. It's if you're shaming yourself into getting motivated, it's not going to work. It's like taking the engine out of the car and then expecting it to move. It's not going to work.
I agree. I don't think shame can work because I believe shame and love fight for the same place in the human mind, and there's only space for one. So if shame fills that spot, there's not a lot of room for love. And decisions that are going to enrich your life are made from a place of love. Like I love myself when I go to bed on time. I love myself when I go for the walk when maybe I don't want to, or similarly when I allow myself to rest when I feel guilty about it. So I think it is acts of love, the verb, but I think shame comes in. And the most interesting thing about shame is it stagnates. Shame keeps us doing more of what we are ashamed of. And that's one of the cruelest parts of the cycle of shame. is that we will repeat what makes us ashamed.
Like relationships, if you're used to going for, say, bad boys, and that's your type, you're gonna go back to them because it's familiar, it's the known. But in hearts of hearts, you realistically know yourself that getting someone that's a little bit more aligned with your values, he might be a little bit more inverted commas boring, is probably what's going to work for you. But it's something deeper rooted into yourself of I may not deserve that person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it can come in different areas and patterns and stuff like that. It doesn't always have to be about how we look or weight loss. It appears in different situations, like jobs or whatever it might be. But relationships is the one that kind of comes to my mind at the minute.
It's like when we're conditioned to chaos, that unspectacularity can feel so unfamiliar and like something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like we're not allowed to trip up. We're not allowed to fall over. It's like, well, toddlers fall over, but they slowly learn how to kind of walk and slowly gradually get there. It's the exact same thing. You don't just kick a toddler when it falls.
I actually love that you said that because if I could put one reframe that's coming into my mind lately, it's what we think of as a step back on the journey of transformation is part of the process. It is how we learn. And as soon as we see that they're not steps backwards, they're not mistakes, they're learning moments, I think you're free. I think you're free to then act in a new and more empowered way. Because what the opposite is thinking it's a mistake and then latching onto the idea it's a mistake so deeply that you create the mistake that you're so scared of. And if there's one thing I know about us humans, we will typically create a situation that we're afraid of in our minds, one way or another.
History repeats itself all the time.
Uh,
It's the stuff
it's
that's going on at the minute. It's just that we're a lot more aware of because of social media. But
Yeah, for
the same
sure.
situations that happened in the 1940s and again in the 1700s and 1500s and all these kind of different dates, but it's the same stuff is happening. It's just that we're a lot more aware. It's a lot more in our face now because of the use of social media, and that's why people can kind of go down tangents and all these kind of different things. Um, you talk about the values piece, and I think it's a very when people hear values, they're like, "Oh, this is just mumbo jumbo bullshit."
Yeah.
But it is that element of like, if you're clear on why you're doing something, it's a hell of a lot easier to get there. But if you're not clear on why you're doing something, you're never going to understand the way to the road you want to go down. But one of the things in the book you talk about, I think it's chapter 7, I think, where to start with actually finding your values. Like if you're to imagine I'm a client, and where would you start? Please don't psychoanalyze me. My brain can't take it. Where would you start with someone if they're trying to find their values?
Very simple. Get a values list. I use one in the book, just some of the ones that mean something to me and my practice. And honestly, pick two or three words that best align with the kind of person you'd like to be in the near future and see what happens. And that's it. That's where I start. It's very underwhelming. For example, my client Ashling, wonderful person. She picked fun. And I said, why fun? She said, I'm 42. I have been on and off diet since I've been 20. She goes, I have never had fun doing this. I've always just approached this assuming I have to be miserable.
Yeah.
And I joke with her that I would like her to approach this less like a feckin' tax audit and more like a puppy chasing bubbles. And she laughed. She laughed so hard at that line that I actually put that line in the book. And I want everybody to experience that. What would it be like? Okay, let's say if you can't get 100% more joy out of change, what would it be like to enjoy this moment 10% more? Like Shane, if I asked you right now, me and you here, what would it be like to enjoy this moment? What would you do to enjoy it 10% more?
Probably stick a football match on.
Right now while we're recording.
Yeah, just exactly. Just stick it on mute and watch a football match. Like, say, if this is being recorded at 8 o'clock tonight, I'd be behind a pillow watching the United match.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I thought you meant instead of us. That
No,
was
no, no. I
on
didn't
my
mean
part.
instead of us. That would be rude, Paul. That would be rude.
But that would be the kind of essence I'd be coming at it from. So people, what I find is with values is people typically gravitate towards what is kind of in them, but what they've forgotten or what they'd like to embody a little bit more of. People who have maybe been conditioned to be very obedient often pick autonomy because they'd like to experience a bit more. I've people pick compassion because they understand that they're not going to hate themselves into change. But of all of it, Shane, what I have found, it's the magic in the coaching process is when people begin to make certain feelings. Again, I go back to it's safe to exist. when people soften and open up to new perspectives, or maybe when you change how people see themselves. I've had genuinely had countless people tell me, I thought I was lazy until I worked with you.
Yeah.
Now, aside from the fact I don't believe laziness exists, which I don't know if that's a hot take or not, I don't believe it exists at all. I've never seen laziness be the reason somebody cannot do something. I think it's procrastination or low self-belief or low self-worth or fear or whatever it is. And I have had a lot of people who have missed coaching calls or who have failed to hit a goal or who have told me they've been dieting for years. And there is always a logic to every behavior. Every behavior has a logic to it with enough compassion, through the lens of compassion. So the amount of people that have said, I'm lazy, and then I'll say, or think to myself at the very least, you work, you've kids, you've made
Yeah.
it this far, etc. I don't know where the laziness is. I think, I think it's that very belief that you're accidentally and subconsciously confirming when you have a perceived error. And
Yeah.
values. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like I love that. Like it's like you have that. You're good at your job. It's not that you're lazy at your job. You're not a lazy parent. You're able to look after your kids when they get sick and all these kind of different things. But it can be that limiting belief of you might be that identity piece of I'm a yo-yo dieter.
Yeah,
And the perfect example is and I'm an emotional dieter. And I'll always say to people, not always, depends on where they're at, but are you an emotional dieter or are you someone who eats emotionally? Or I'm an emotional eater or are you someone who eats emotionally? And there's two different narratives behind that. One is an identity and it can match up to the outcome behind it. And one is takes that shame away and distances itself away of like, I'm actually human because all
yeah,
humans eat emotionally. Emotional eating isn't just eating the tub of Ben and Jerry's in the evening.
of
It's
course.
having a meal out
Intentional.
with your partner. It's having bring your kids to McDonald's to have that meal out that maybe you haven't missed out. You've missed out for the last 10, 15 years with them. So it those identity pieces are the biggest mindset shifts. And the mental weight piece is genuinely the bit that needs to leave the building. The scales weight is what people is the outcome that people want, but the process to get that is the mental weight that people need to lose first, which is that reaction to the scales, which is you talk about an awful lot, that reaction to scales in the book, that reaction to when we wake up dreary or we wake up stressed and seeing ourselves in the mirror and we're kind of start to picking at our clothes or whatever it may be, or we've had a row with our partner and you're kind of like, well, then you go into that kind of full, maybe that's self-sabotage mode. But I also believe self-sabotage is a term that's overused.
Yeah, I think it's easy to pour your discomfort in life into your body and scapegoat your body for the
It's
things
the
that
one
are
thing
going
we try to
wrong.
control.
Yeah, and it can be a mistaken attempt. I don't say this with any finger wagging. I say this just because it's been my biggest area of interest for the last 10 years. But, you mentioned about the scale weight. I think what we all want even more than weight loss is calm because calm satisfies and satisfaction will moderate behavior.
Yeah.
It might even be better off to say that satisfaction brings calm and that moderates behavior, but it doesn't matter. My point is a calm mind will typically moderate behavior. So I've seen it in my own life. It's one of the biggest mindset shifts I've ever made
But it
myself. The reason I was
scares
so
people.
frantic.
It
It's
scares
scary
people.
because there's an
It's new.
unfamiliarity to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think for some people there's the well-worn path of cruelty. When you make a so-called mistake, you're at a fork in the road. One path is paved with kindness to recenter, and the other is paved with cruelty. Weigh yourself to check if you're okay, eat less to undo the damage. And at that fork in the road, it's the path you take that makes all the difference. And it can be a scary thing to choose the path of calm because there's nothing going to externally validate your mistake. There's no one going to tell you got away with it. There's no scale going to confirm that you're a horrible person. There's no diet or app like, yeah, don't worry, you can just start tomorrow. You just it requires you to ground yourself back in the moment and make your next choice. And I think it's harder than it sounds.
It is harder. And it is easy because you've done like if you read the book and you listen to Paul's podcast and stuff like that, you'll understand where Paul's background has kind of come from in relation to his open struggles. But and I think there is a fine line between someone saying because I've gone through this, I completely understand everyone, but that's not the way the book comes across. It's not the
I've
preachy.
actually tried to decenter myself. I mean, I've touched on myself in a couple of
Yeah,
chapters,
yeah,
for sure, but I think I hope you notice I've tried to decenter myself
yeah, yeah.
aside from mentioning it.
But I think it's a powerful thing that you've mentioned it because it can give you that little bit of an authority piece to kind of saying, I've been there, I've
Yeah.
worn this t-shirt. Your thing might be different, but I got you. That's kind of the way it kind of comes across in the book.
Well, I think we all have the universal. I had this story in my head, and it was my girlfriend that encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone, that I can't be happy until my legs are big tree trunks of legs. Actually, let me tell you something, because this helped me so much, and I really wish I could credit where I saw it, and I cannot remember. It was on an Instagram Q&A a few years ago, and I didn't realize how much it influenced me until recently. So there was a guy on Instagram I followed once upon a time, or maybe I still do. It might even be a guy called Shimmy. I don't know. Maybe not, because if it is him and I describe him this way, it'll be a bit insulting. But anyway, the guy was built quite like me, which is quite a strong looking upper body and then quite a slender looking lower half. Now, I train full body split. I work on my legs, pistol squats and Nordics. So I feel like I have to say that just to be like, it's not like I don't exercise my lower body. I do, but it does not take the shape that I want, even no matter what I do, no matter what I exercise. And I'm 35, I'm nearly 36, so I kind of made peace with that. But a couple of years back, I remember he got a Q&A question and it said, this is a good faith question, but I notice you're built very like me. You're top heavy, strong arms, but you're quite thin on the lower half. How how do you reconcile this? And his answer was fabulous. It was simple. I just decided I'm okay with being a guy who has slim legs. I exercise as a guy with slim legs. I dress for a guy with slim legs, and I live happily as a guy with slim legs. And then that started me getting the wheel spinning in my own head, which is I could spend the next 2 years committing to bulking up my legs so that they'll finally be beach ready. Or I can just decide that big legs are not a prerequisite for shorts on the beach. And the latter is so much easier. And the reason I've said that is not to downplay people's struggles or their body image. It's to make you realize you cannot pause life waiting to be ready. Ready is more of a choice than it is a feeling. And I still wrestle with this a lot. And my girlfriend is still very good at encouraging me to wear shorts when I feel very self-conscious because we live in Spain so much. But I still have to remind myself going, dude, tree trunk thighs are not a precondition for the beach. They're not a precondition to do work
They're
out in the
covered
park.
up.
But when I'm in the park, I'm not, you see, I live in a very hot climate.
Ah, okay. But they're
So
covered
for
up like if you're wearing board shorts, unless you're wearing the
But my
magazine.
girlfriend encourages me to wear nicer, higher shorts.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
She
yeah.
says
That's
I look
okay.
nicer in them and that they're attractive fit, and I get very self-conscious, extreme, still to this day. And she says, I think you look so handsome. And it's funny because even she said, how many girls have you dated? And I'm like, however many girls in the past. And she's like, have you ever got the impression that any of them were put off by
Use
your
your
legs?
legs.
No, never. But even if they were, would you want that kind of person? So my whole premise with body image difficulties is I know it's hard. I do. I know. But if you start a fitness goal from the premise of worthy when, no, it can't be. It has to be worthy here and now. It has to start from that premise, in my opinion. But because if you can start there, in my opinion, that actually makes the likelihood of hitting your goal more likely and more worthwhile, as opposed to how many stories have heard. And how many stories have we all heard about? I got everything I wanted. I got the body. I got the car. And I wasn't any happier. And I think those stories have lost all meaning because they're almost so cliched and borderline patronizing when said in the wrong way. I'm saying right here, I still wrestle with the monstrosities that are my legs. And I'm really grateful that I have two working legs. And I've decided that big tree trunk, masculine, huge legs are not a precondition for the park or the beach anymore, despite the fact that my ego still wants them to be. And I wish everybody would get to that place because I had a client recently who was saying something similar about a bikini on her holiday, 58 years of age. And then when we talked about how long she had been waiting, she said she had been essentially not since her teenage years, which is 40 years. And you're just trying to gently be like, look, I get it, but could we decide that losing a stone isn't a precondition for the beach? Because it's not going to magically just happen at 59 or 60. And I think the hardest part is I don't want to come along and invalidate anyone's experience ever, but I want to nudge people and poke at them and really have them question why they think they need to be a certain way to do a certain thing because life is now. Final thought on this, Shane, because it's different but the same. I did a cool radio interview for the book on Saturday on Lochray FM with a guy called Rob. Fabulous guy. So much time for him, but I've even more time for him now. He was saying his lifelong dream was to be a radio presenter, and he saw an advertisement for a voluntary position when he was 62 and he applied and he got it. And now at 63, he's living his dream on the radio. And I was like, that dude,
That's
that's the coolest thing I've
that's
ever heard. I
class.
love it.
That's
I
class.
love that stuff.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. There's never like I think. sometimes you can kind of be watching other people as well, thinking that they have their shit together. And I'll always remember something my dad says of like, as blunt as this is, dad's not a poet, I can assure you of that, but he's fairly blunt when he says things of like, no one has their shit together. We are
We're all just
all
knee deep in our
winging
own,
it.
man.
We are all winging it. You are literally just doing your best as much as you can. And if you can be there in your 80s, 90s, whatever it is, and you just say, I just did my best, you're winning.
That's it. We're all just standing knee deep in our own shit because,
Yeah.
and then we think everybody else has theirs together.
I
I
like,
agree.
there's the thing here, where is it behind me here? So that's Henrik Larsson's signature here behind me. And I remember that was the first time and only time I've ever been starstruck. We met him outside Celtic Park. And Johan Mjalby, this is a blast in the past from 1990 football. Johan Mjalby was beside him. We completely ignored him. And we just went straight for Henrik. But I couldn't talk. I couldn't go over and get it. And Dad went over and he was like, Henrik was like, I can't sign that because it's a scarf. It won't work. And Dad was like, well, I think I was like, what is it? I think I was 14. And Dad was like, what happened? I was like, I literally just got completely starstruck. And I was like, well, he has to wipe his ass himself. So he's nothing more special than you. He just seems to be.
100%.
So like we can put these people up here. I don't know how I've gone down the Henrik Larsson route, but
But it's true. It's a perfect example. It's true. I like grounding examples like that. You
uh,
know, what is it they say? Even at the highest point in the world, we're all just seated on our arses.
yeah. And if you zoom out, we're all ants. We're nothing. If you kind of go from space, you can't even see us. So that insignificant.
And the little reframes like that did help me actually finally just have the courage to release the fucking book without overthinking.
Because the last time you were on, or the one of the times you were on, I'd kind of said it to you, or you were talking about it, or we were talking about it, of kind of like the idea. And I think, as you said, like something just clicked for you. Of kind of like this at the time.
There's something clicked. It did click, but maybe it was just the fact that I decided to, instead of trying to get rid of perfectionism, I channeled it to just switch it to excellence rather than perfectionism. I don't know. Something did click about a year ago though, and there was just a readiness.
And
And
now it's going again.
yeah, and now yeah, it's gone again. Now I feel motivated to do it again.
Yeah, that's generic as I said. And where can people get the book, Paul?
Amazon, Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk if you're in England, Amazon.ie if you're in Ireland. Leave a review. Did you know that a tiny portion of books actually make it, especially self-published? And I'm determined to be in that tiny minority of books that make it. So buy it and leave a review, please and thank you.
And what's the name of the book?
Full, The Emptiness of Overeating, a kinder, calmer path to weight loss.
I would highly recommend. There's a load of little frameworks that Paul has in there. We didn't even get into them, but there's a load of little frameworks that people can kind of use to kind of to tackle some of the stuff. But highly recommend the book. It's short and simple. It is to the point, but there's a huge element of compassion to it. It's not just another fitness book, which is just hitting you with the generic term calorie deficit, because life is more than a calorie deficit.
Thank
Um,
you, thank you for the kind words. It means the world. You've no idea. It's so validating to do something you love and then have people say nice things. So I appreciate that.
I wouldn't say them if I didn't mean them.
I
So,
appreciate it a lot.
so Paul, cannot thank you enough for coming on. It's amazing to see where the book is going, and I know it's going to go even further. So, massive congratulations.
Thank you so much.